It's either just a song that sounds really good when 10,000 people sing it, or it's true. And it's not true because we sing it because it is true, that Jesus Christ is the cornerstone. He is the foundation and the beginning and the end of everything that we build. And so we want to build our life on Christ as the cornerstone. We want to build our marriages. We want to build our friendships. We want to build our occupations. Everything that we want for His renown, for His gain. Amen? And so it's good to be able to sing that. We changed the second song that we were going to sing this morning at about 5 a.m. Last night we had the privilege of getting to have dinner with our two distinguished guests. And while we were having dinner, I asked our guests, I said, is there a hymn? These are two devout Christian brothers. And so I said, is there a song or a hymn that maybe you grew up singing that really meant a lot to you? And right away, it was interesting. Dr. George said, I love the song Softly and Tenderly. I love that song. He said, even though I'm a devout Catholic, I remember going to, just a church that was, a church that sang hymns, and a church that just would always sing that truth about God. And we thought we'd add it today, not just in His honor, but because it's such a true song. That song, Softly and Tenderly, in one sense is very missional. It echoes Revelation 3:20, where it says, "Behold, I stand at the door and I knock." And it's so true that Jesus, the ultimate gentleman, begins the conversation by knocking at the door of your heart, the conviction of His Spirit. And then we answer and we say, I'm in. Come on in and come take over my life. Be the landlord of everything that I am. And so in one sense, there's a reason that people like Billy Graham and D.L. Moody use this song as an invitation song, because it's missional, but it's also memorial in the sense that in 1968, for example, when this country was mourning and in lament because Martin Luther King had been assassinated, this was the last song that they played at his memorial service, at his funeral service, to remind everyone that it was a temporary goodbye for the people of God, that Martin might not be here, but that he'll be in heaven. And so he's softly and tenderly calling us not just to be saved, but to be sustained, amen? And that in this moment we sing that same truth, that death loses its sting in evangelism, but then death also loses its sting because one out of one of us will one day die. And in that moment, we'll finally get to be home. Amen? So let's just come to the Lord and prepare our hearts for it. And so, Lord, we sing this truth. We preach it to one another. We preach it to ourselves. We thank You for the home that we find. So much more than brick and mortar. So much more than a place, but a person. That heaven is where You are, God. So thank You for calling us home. Thank You, Lord, that many of us have different stories to tell of when You knocked on the heart and we answered that call. Best thing we ever did. And so even as we sing this moment, we look back at the hour we first believed. Let us not lose focus of what You've done in our life. I looked over at Dr. George when we were singing Come Home, and I thanked him for prompting that. The worship leader that you were, sir, I'm just telling you, there's someone in this room this morning that needed to hear, maybe someone watching from live stream that needed to come home. Maybe even someone who's saved, but has just been prodigal, maybe just full of shame because of decisions that have been made. And they just need to know that God has his arms out, and he's the forgiving father for the prodigal child. And if you needed to hear that today, come home. God's not upset with you. God loves you just the way that you are, and he wants you home. Amen? Amen. Can we thank the worship collective for leading? Great job. Have a seat real quick. Man, I know that just judging from the traffic of the amount of people who have been emailing me trying to figure out how to come backstage and meet these two academic legends, that so many of you are so excited to have them in the house. Let me just give you a little bit of bio information, and then we'll sit down and have a conversation. By the way, we typically, even though we have up to 75 minutes in a combo, typically take about an hour, hour and 5. Today we'll probably utilize the entirety of it, and so just know that they typically sit down and have this conversation somewhere in the 2 to 3 hour range, and so we're condensing it to about a 50 minute conversation today. Trust me, time's gonna fly when you hear what they have to say. But just a little bit of information. Dr. Robert George is a highly respected scholar and leader, and one of the most prominent conservative voices of our time. Many of you look to him to speak into matters in culture as a conservative evangelical leader, and as someone who always seems to have gravitas, but at the same time is willing to say something that might even be confrontational without being dishonorable. He's a widely published a professor as well. You can read his writings in the New York Times and the Harvard Law Review and the Washington Journal and the Washington Post. He's an award-winning judicial fellow with the Supreme Court. He's earned multiple degrees, doctorates from Harvard, Oxford. He's been awarded over 20 honorary degrees in areas such as law, ethics, science, and the Division of Humanities. And so, again, just a celebrated author and a professor, and one of the great conservative thinkers of our time. We also have with us Dr. Cornel West, a cultural icon, and honestly, just one of the preeminent liberal voices of our time. And so just this rare moment where you get a guy on the far right and you get a guy on the far left, and they happen to be the dearest friends. He's the first African American to graduate from Princeton with a PhD in philosophy and has degrees from Harvard, as well as over 20 honorary degrees as well. He's published 20 books. Many of you might not know him from his academic work, but you probably saw the movie The Matrix and The Matrix Reloaded, and you go, that looks like the guy in the movie, all right? But there's been over 25 documentaries that he's been a part of. The man has, just Grammy nods in his life. He's written just so many different things with so many artists. He just really is just a voice in the wilderness, and he's a dear brother in Christ. Such an honor to have him here. For those of you who maybe are going, I thought I saw him in the movie, we do have about a 50-second reel from the movie Matrix Reloaded. Come on, let's watch this together and put your hands together for these two gentlemen. Come on, put your hands together for these distinguished guests. Such an honor to have you here. Before we talk about just civil discourse, which is really what we want to attack more than anything else today, could you give us a little bit of your own personal testimony? We'd love to hear just how you got to the place that you've gotten to, how your upbringing has affected so much of what we see now on the visible edges in your life. But give us a little bit of your backstory, if you don't mind.
Well, thank you. First, Pastor David, let me say what an honor and privilege it is to be here at Liberty with these wonderful students and your wonderful faculty and staff. And it was such a joy to be with you and your dear wife and your daughter Grace yesterday evening, and Katie for that lovely dinner. And we're so grateful to you for that. And of course, it's always a joy to be with my beloved friend, my brother, Dr. West. He's not only Counselor West in there, he's Counselor West for me, and I rely on his counsel and guidance, and have learned so much from him, and especially from the wonderful example, the model of integrity and honor and decency that he sets. So what a privilege it is to be here with him and with all of you. I grew up in the hills of West Virginia, just a few miles across the border there, hunting and fishing and hiking and being a sort of Huck Finn type character. My grandfathers were both immigrants to this country. My mom's mom fleeing the poverty of southern Italy, Calabria. My mom's dad. My dad's dad fleeing the oppression in Syria as a member of a small Christian minority in that troubled country. And of course, we're all working and praying for the Christian communities and other victims of persecution in the Middle East today, where that continues. I'm wearing, as is Brother Cornell, a bracelet that was given to us by Pastor David's beloved sister, representing the chains that bind so many people as they try to practice their faith across the world today. And we're certainly in sympathy and in solidarity with people who are struggling. But my father was saved by from the mines by the Second World War. He was conscripted at age 18 into the service, served with great distinction in Normandy and in France, and then with the Occupation Army. He was honored for that as a Chevalier of the Legion of Honor of France, but he didn't have the opportunity to get higher education, further education. When he got back from the war, went straight into work. So I was the first in my family to go to college. Went off to Swarthmore College, where I fell in love, not only with a wonderful, beautiful girl who's been my wife of 34 years, but also I fell in love with ideas and with the pursuit of knowledge, with the pursuit of truth. And above all for that, I have to express my gratitude to a dear friend that I hope someday to meet. And that's the ancient Greek philosopher Plato. It was encountering Plato's dialogues that transformed my understanding of what life was fundamentally about, and certainly what academic work was fundamentally about. I learned something profound that I hope all of you will learn if you have not learned already. And that is, as much as we value for instrumental purposes the pursuit of knowledge, the pursuit of truth, as much as we hope out of our educations to get good jobs and make some money and acquire social standing, all of which are good things. There's nothing wrong with those things, but they're not what's fundamental, and they must never be put in the place of what's fundamental. What I learned from Plato is that above all, knowledge, truth is valuable just for its own sake. Its intrinsic value is what matters. So don't allow your educations to be totally instrumentalized. Keep your eyes focused on truth and the pursuit of truth for its inherent enrichment, for its intrinsic value. And of course, we as Christians believe that the truth is not merely a set of propositions about the way the universe works or the way a cell operates or what caused the First World War or anything like that. Those are important things, those are worth knowing, those are valuable truths, but we believe that the truth is not just a set of propositions, but above all, the truth is a person, the person of Jesus Christ, the second person of the Blessed Trinity, our Redeemer.
Dr. George, before we go to Dr. West and his personal story, I'm just curious. I think when people look at you, you look like someone they'd cast in a movie as a professor at an Ivy League school like Princeton. And you look like you would be maybe like a child of privilege or a bit of a silver, spoon character, but you're the first from West Virginia in your family to go to college. I'm just curious, how many of you're the first person in your immediate family to go to, will you stand up just really quickly? I think there's a instant personal connection with that. Wow, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Isn't it? So many of you. Yeah. Aim high. You might get there one day, all right? It's as good as it gets.
Brother West.
Well, first I want to say I'm just so deeply blessed to be here. It's been such a warm welcome for both of us here. And I want to thank you for that. Even at the airport with Brother Kevin and Brother Swede and this brother right here, he is a special visionary leader, Brother David Nasser. Oh yes, very much so. And his beloved wife Jennifer and daughter Grace and Sister Katie, we had a time last night in the life of the mind and the life of the Lord.
Honestly, I got to tell you, they say things and presume you know what they're talking about because it's at a whole other level. So I kept going to the bathroom and asking Siri, like words that are really long. Y'all would just say things, and I was like, sure. And I'm like, I'll be right back. And I was like, Siri, what did Freud say in his 4th book in the 4th chapter? Then I'd come back out, and it was exhausting, amazing, but.
No, in all seriousness, I am who I am because somebody loved me and somebody cared for me. That I am a product of the West family. Ooh, I wish you all could have met my father before he passed, and my mother's still going. Irene B. West is the elementary school named after her in Sacramento, California, where I grew up. And my family was inextricably tied to Shiloh Baptist Church. It's on the chocolate side of Sacramento, but we worship in the same God. And that same Jesus, very much so, trying to see Jesus more clearly, follow Jesus more nearly, love Jesus more dearly, that's what has gone into the shaping of who and what I am. No, I'm just being very honest about it. And that I'm a cracked vessel, I've always been a cracked vessel, but always recognize I've got a joy that the world didn't give me and the world can't take away. No, it's true. I've got a love that can't be defeated. I've got a courage that can't be crushed. And it has everything to do with what the great favorite philosopher of my dear brother Robbie, and anytime Robbie and I get together, we don't only just have a good time, we revel in each other's humanity. The love can never reducible to politics. Made in the image of God, made in the likeness of God, deep friends beyond friendship, not reducible to agreement on public policy. I think he's wrong on a number of issues. He thinks I'm wrong on a number of issues. We work it out. But we revel in each other's humanity, and we meet each other at the foot of the cross. And that blood at that cross.
You got to go back to your story, though. I know you don't like to talk about yourself, but I heard last night, honestly, from you, your father drove you to Harvard, and you went to Harvard in 3 years.
I was running out of money. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. You stay 4 years, study, love hard, work hard, play hard, learn how to grow and mature, or most importantly, as I tell my students, learn how to die in order to learn how to live. Christians must die daily. Christians must die daily, trying to crush that sin, that evil inside of us. The last thing we ever want to be is well adjusted to injustice and well adapted to indifference. That indifference, the one trait that makes the very angels weep. Indifference, the evil's more insidious than evil itself. This is Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. So that to be a Christian, it takes tremendous audacity to be in a process of becoming a Christian, because we know we're fallen, we know we're finite, we know we're fallible. We are cracked vessels, and we're trying to allow a spirit greater than us to work through us so that we become a force for the kingdom. And if the kingdom of God is within you, then everywhere you go, you ought to leave a little heaven behind. And how you relate, how you connect, how you laugh, how you hug, how you smile, your witness, moral, spiritual, political, economic. Focus on the least of these. Focus on the vulnerable. Focus on the weak across the board. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what gender you are. I don't care what sexual orientation, what national identity. You are made in the image and likeness of God, and you have a sanctity, you have a dignity that warrants a certain kind of treatment.
Preach. So good. So, again, on paper, you are such an unlikely couple. I mean, you are a conservative voice. You don't even like to be called a Democrat because you're way to the left of them.
I'm a Christian. That means I'm trying to turn the world upside down in the name of love. That's a different orientation. It cuts deeper than all of these political categories and labels, you see.
Yes, sir. And so because of your commonality in Christ, talk to us about how this friendship started and how you do disagree all the time, but you're never disrespectful. Tell us about the unity that really allows you to be able to disagree, but yet grow in your friendship.
In the 1990s, we were both teaching at Princeton University. I'm still there, but Brother Cornell has abandoned me to go up to Harvard. But the good news is that when his daughter had to decide whether to go to Harvard to study with Daddy or to come to Princeton to study with Uncle Robbie, she made exactly the right decision. So I've got Zaytoon right here with me at
God bless her, be with her too.
Yeah, that's right. So we were in some seminars together, some faculty seminars together. We knew each other a little bit, but not very well. We were acquaintances. We weren't yet friends. And of course, we didn't see things and don't see things exactly the same way. We have some profound differences. But I noticed that in these conversations in faculty seminars on issues of public policy and political philosophy and so forth, although I thought, Cornell's getting all the wrong answers, I said, the cat's asking all the right questions, and nobody else is asking the right questions. So I began to admire him even then. I understood the depth of his insight and understanding, because 3/4 of the battle is asking the right questions. So often we fail because we're asking the wrong questions. Well, then back in 2006, one day I got a knock at the door during my office hours. A wonderful student of mine, turns out also to have been a student of Cornell's, named Andrew, came to see me to ask if I would participate in a project that he and some of his fellow students were organizing. They were creating a new magazine, a campus magazine, called The Green Light. And in the magazine, in each issue, it was going to feature an interview of one professor by another professor. So he said, for the first issue, we have asked Professor Cornel West to be the interviewer, and we've invited him to select another faculty member to interview. And he said that he'd like to interview you. Would you be willing to be interviewed for the inaugural issue of our magazine by Professor West? And I said, well, Andrew, now Andrew was a religion major, brilliant religion major at Princeton. I said, well, Andrew, let me make sure I've understood what you're saying here. You're telling me that you asked Professor West to do an interview with any other member of the faculty, and he selected me to be the interview subject? And Andrew said, yes, that's right. And I said, well, I want you to send a message back to Professor West. I want you to tell Professor West that Professor George says, but it is I who should be seeking baptism from you. To which Andrew responded, huh? I said, you just tell him that and he'll understand. He said, okay, but will you do it? And I said, I'd be absolutely honored and delighted to do it. So Cornell came to my office on the appointed day. We were supposed to talk for an hour. We talked for 4 hours. The recording machine ran out, but we just kept going on. In those days, we had recording machines. You young people don't know what they are. You do this on your cell phones, and they never run out until the battery runs out. But this is an old-fashioned cassette tape player, and the tape ran out, but we just kept going, because once we were in it, we couldn't stop, and we've never stopped since that day in 2006. So even when I looked at my watch and saw that it was 6 o'clock and time to go home, I said, well, Brother Cornell, this has been wonderful. You know, it's just so good to get to know you better, and this has been such a rich conversation. We need to get to know each other better. Let's get together, let's have lunch, let's talk some more. And he said, oh, Brother Robbie, that would be a wonderful thing to do. And I said, well, why don't you walk me down to my car? I'm just parked down in the parking lot down here. So then we walked down to the car, where I stood for another half hour, 45 minutes with my hand on the latch as we continued to go back and forth with each other. And then just in that same week, a few days later, we got a letter from our dean of the college saying that she was needing more senior members of the faculty to teach freshman seminars. And so the light bulb went off over my head, and I said to myself, well, wouldn't it be wonderful if Brother Cornell and I could just continue that conversation, perhaps have some readings with a group of students, freshmen, and just kind of keep the conversation going. So I got in touch with Cornell and asked if he'd be interested in doing that, and he said he'd absolutely love to do that. So we started teaching a freshman seminar together. We read Sophocles' Antigone and Plato's Gorgias, which had been so important to me in my own intellectual and spiritual odyssey. We read St. Augustine's Confessions. Oh, yeah. We went all the way up through into the 19th century, read Marx, we read Hayek, and into the 20th century, read John Dewey, C.S. Lewis, and so forth. And it was a fantastic experience. And then, so we just kept doing that, and we kept teaching, not always for freshmen, but sometimes for upperclassmen, kept teaching until Brother Cornell abandoned me and went to Harvard. And even then, on one occasion, he's come back to Princeton, and we've continued to teach together. And I came to Harvard. Yeah, so it's been a blessed relationship. And I'll tell you, I've learned so much, not only substantively in engaging these wonderful, profound texts with Brother Cornell, so much substantively, but also about how to teach. Because this man is a master teacher as well, engaging with students, bringing out the best in students, requiring students, by the way, to consider all sides of a question, never confusing education with indoctrination. Some people say the opposite of education is ignorance. No, the opposite of education is indoctrination. Education means considering the best to be said on all sides of questions, being willing to have whatever your views are challenged in a serious way so that you can get to the truth of the matter. The reason we need open minds and intellectual humility and robust dialogue and freedom of speech is not because there is no truth, but because those are the conditions of truth seeking. And people got to understand that today.
That's exactly right. Very important point. Very important point. Because, I mean, Jesus Christ will take away your sin, but he doesn't take away your mind. That your mind is to be used in such a way that you recognize both your own limitations. We all have various forms of ignorance. We all have various forms of wrestling with sin. But at the same time, something is unleashed intellectually, spiritually, morally, in relation to others with those you agree and disagree with. Because when you learn and when you listen, when you have the kind of genuine humility, and that humility is rooted in great gratitude on the one hand and a sublime dependence on a God greater than you. And once you decide to live that kind of life, which is a way of life, it's just not a matter of consenting to propositions. It's a way of life, a mode of being in the world with a smile on your face, with a quest for truth. And the condition of truth is always to allow suffering to speak. The suffering inside of you, the suffering inside of friends, of stranger, of neighbor. And we Christians, we're told to love our enemies. And you don't try that one on your own. You need a whole lot of grace for that. A lot of grace for that. But that's part of the imperative and the obligation. And you're headed towards something so grand.
You've coined the phrase intellectual humility, and I think your friendship exudes that. Could you expound a little bit more on that, and how even at any level you continue to be a student and learn from opposing thought and learn to be challenged? Sometimes it strengthens your own conviction. Sometimes it opens you up to new avenues that maybe you had obstructed. Speak into intellectual humility a little bit more.
I mean, one is that, life itself is an adventure connected to a love and a justice on the one hand, a beauty and a quest for a genuine relation with a God who, out of kenosis, self-emptying, self-donating, self-giving, loved us so that we have access to a source. This is the source of our piety, the dependence here. And given that framework, it means, in the language of the great Samuel Beckett, that we try again, fail better. Try again, fail better. All of us fall short of the glory of God. All of us fall short of the standards that has been bequeathed to us. And yet, we are fortified. We put on the whole armor, intellectually, morally, politically, socially, even as we again learn from each other in disagreement. You see, I try to look at the world through the lens of the cross, and that cross is not simply the cross where Jesus' blood was shed, but it's also a site where there is unarmed truth, unconditional love, justice, what love looks like in public, tenderness, what love feels like in private. Tenderly, that song says.
Softly and tenderly.
Softly and tenderly. You see, Christians, yes, we're tough. Jesus has lips of thunder and acts of lurid decision. He's turning over tables, running out the money changers in the temple. But Jesus is so sweet and tender and gentle and kind. That's what we also are to be connected to swing between the toughness and the tenderness. And we need a magnanimity of surrender. That's very different than simply a cold obedience. It's not a matter of just following a law. But that magnanimity of surrender allows you to become self-emptying, to give of yourself, self-giving, self-donating in this way. A willingness to acknowledge that something bigger than you can work through you as a force for good given our cracked vessel status, that I was a gangster before I met Jesus, and now I'm a redeemed sinner with gangster proclivities. Pray for me. I got to conquer it every day. So when I call anybody a gangster, I'm looking inside of myself. I mean, I've got in trouble for calling the president a gangster. You know what I mean? Brother West, how can you call Donald Trump? He's my brother. He's made in the image of God. He got gangster proclivities. He's got to work much harder, it seems to me. I got to work much harder. We're in it together. We loving each other and also keeping each other accountable, answerable. He can come back to me. Brother West, sounds like you a gangster too. Let's just work it out. But let's be honest. Let's be candid. Love is a matter of respect, protect, but also correct. Also correct. Oh, yeah. When grandmama loved us, she respected us, she protected us, and corrected us. Sometimes a little violent. We won't go into the details.
You know, David, there is one fact about ourselves that we know infallibly, and that is the fact of our own fallibility. You know, all of us, every single person here, every single person in the country, every single person in the world who's honest, knows that some of their beliefs, the beliefs that they hold right now, are not true. The trouble is they don't know which ones they are. If they knew which ones were untrue, they would replace them with true beliefs. Now that, as soon as we acknowledge it, provides the foundation for this crucial condition of truth-seeking called intellectual humility. We have to understand that we could be wrong. Our critic could be right. We could be wrong not only about trivial and ephemeral and minor things, but about profound, major, important things. And what does that mean? That means we've got to listen to the critic. We've got to be willing to entertain the challenge. We must never shut down the critic or treat an intellectual adversary as an enemy. When Brother Cornell and I disagree, whether it's about economics, whether it's about social issues, whatever it is, when we disagree, we are not enemies trying to defeat each other. We are friends joined together in the common pursuit of truth. We're pursuing it in the Socratic manner by what philosophers call I know there's some philosophers out there, I've met you, you're wonderful. By what philosophers call dialectic, right? We're going back and forth. Sometimes we get a little passionate. But what binds us together is something more profound and deeper than what separates us, whatever the issue is, and that is the desire to get at the truth. And so we are working with each other together in the common project of trying to get at the truth. So I want to be challenged. I want Brother Cornell to challenge me because I might be wrong. And if I am wrong, if he persuades me that I am wrong, he has done me the greatest service. Even if it's a public embarrassment, he has still done me the greatest service because there is nothing more important than truth. Nothing more important than truth. And if he has moved me from error and falsehood to truth, he has been the greatest friend a guy could ever have.
And so for us as Christians, Christ being our greatest model of correction, the posture of that is it's not even just a suggestion, but a command that if God puts people in my life that I don't agree with, the job that you're going to have in years to come, the people that you're going to do life with that happen to be in the same debate team with you or whatever, that you can win the point and lose the person by seeing them again as someone who's the enemy instead of the prize of God. And so the obligation for us as believers is that we have to be honorable to someone, even if they're not honorable to us.
Absolutely. I mean, it's what I would call charitable Christian hatred. And I learned that in Vacation Bible School. Sarah Ray, I'll never forget her. She said, "Little Ronnie, hate the sin and try to love the sinner. You hate the injustice. Anytime you love people, you hate the fact they're being treated unjustly. Anytime you love your neighbor, you loathe the fact they're being treated unfairly, and if you don't do something, the rocks are gonna shout out. But you never lose sight of the fact that one, they're made in the image of God, and two, just like you early in your life, they are redeemable. They can be changed and transformed. Christians never give up on other people, because there was a time in our lives where we needed to be redeemed and transformed. And anybody who has a genuine relationship with Jesus knows the fundamental change that has taken place in your life. And that kind of change is available to anybody, no matter what color, sexual orientation, national identity, across the board. Profoundly human affair. So in that sense, Christians really become profound humanists without being narrowly secular humanists. They're humanists because they're embracing the humanity of each and every one of us, but it's always tied to an ascending view of the world in which you keeping your eyes on a kingdom that is so much greater and grander than you can imagine.
You know, there's another dimension of that I think is very important for Christians today, so I'm speaking to you as Christians. And that is this: in addition to intellectual humility, we need courage. Now, Christians have always needed courage. You go all the way back to the earliest period of the church, to the ecclesia. Christians have always needed courage. There's never a time when that was a virtue that wasn't necessary. But we certainly need it today, and in part for this reason. You will be tempted, if you have not been tempted already, to go along with what you know or deeply believe to be wrong for fear of being accused of hatred, being accused of bigotry, being accused of hating somebody. This is why what Cornell says about loving the sinner while hating the sin is so critically important. If you don't have courage, you will capitulate for fear of being labeled, for fear of being called a hater. People will say to you, if you disapprove of what I do, if you disapprove of how I conduct my life, if you disapprove of these actions, then you're a hater, you're a bigot, you don't love me. You cannot succumb to that. You cannot succumb to that. Don't be a hater, but don't let anyone bully you or intimidate you into capitulation with what you know to be wrong for fear of being labeled.
Can you speak a little more into that? Can you talk about, I know you're both such advocates of freedom of speech, and we'll talk in just a minute about how that's being squashed in the higher academic world these days, and it's such a concern for both of you. But can you talk about the abuse of freedom of speech and the accountability for someone to not be abusive with their freedom? Everybody knows don't shout fire in a theater, but beyond that, bullying on the internet, shaming someone because you're correcting publicly in an effort to get a lot of retweets. Talk about the responsibility of the way correction should be handled.
And I think, you were talking about the United States itself, but when you think of the world as a whole, you got so many precious brothers and sisters in various countries who don't even have the right to freely worship, the right to freely express their voice, their opinion, their perspective. And we've got to be in solidarity with them. Your blessed sister talked about that when we were walking in. But think about what's going on in Kashmir. Think about what's going on in Tibet. Think of what's going on in so many places where people do not have the right to even express themselves. And blessed Iran. Good God Almighty. Then you come to the States. We do have the right to express ourselves, but you got crowd mentalities. You got mob mentalities. And people are just so willing to fit into and conform with the ways of the world. Somewhere I read, be ye not conformed, but transformed. There's a fundamental difference between Christian greatness and worldly success. And never reduce Christian greatness to worldly success. So there be it issues of free speech, allowing voices to be heard. Now, I come from the black people. Our anthem is lift every voice. It doesn't say lift every echo. See what I mean? If you're just going to be an echo in an echo chamber, then go on and be conformist, complacent, and cowardly and get your worldly success and miss out on all that Christian greatness. You're missing out on the good stuff. You're missing out on the joy. You can have your ephemeral pleasure that you want. You're missing out on the deeper, enduring joys in that sense, you see. And you're missing out on the ability to have the kind of witness that allows the world to say its dominant ways: hatred, envy, contempt, domination, indifference, callousness. Those are the dominant ways of the world. That's what it is to live in a sinful world. But here come those tied to love. That cross, the Roman Empire and all of its viciousness, crushing Jesus, thinking that somehow they've imposed a foreclosure on the love. But that blood and that love just keeps trickling and trickling and trickling, and people affected by that blood. And I'm talking about blood at the cross, not the Kool-Aid. We got a lot of churches that just providing Kool-Aid. They're not providing the deep blood. I'm talking about that transformative stuff that turns you upside down and makes you recognize that you can be a force in ways you could not conceive of. And that Kool-Aid just allows you to conform. You know, your prayer becomes, let's make a deal with God. Give me my next blessing. Please, God, move this mountain. No. God gives you the strength to climb the mountain. God gives you the strength to be over against. This is not a matter of a market religion and a commodified religion. This is a blood-centered, Christocentric religion in which you learn how to step out on nothing and land on something. That's called faith. That's called faith. And it's a beautiful thing, but it's dangerous, it's scary. Kierkegaard called it living dangerously. That's what it is to be in the world, but not of the world. To be tested and then have a what? A testimony. You know, that testimony is something else. You all know what I'm talking about. You got testimonies yourself. You wouldn't be here. But all of us need to be pushed, deeply pushed, so that we don't in any way accommodate ourselves to empire. Don't accommodate ourselves to any form of ideology that loses sight of the humanity of people. So it's not anti-black, anti-white, anti-red, anti-brown. It's not anti-Jewish. It's not anti-Arab. It's not anti-Muslim. It's not anti-Mexican. It's not anti-Palestinian. It's not anti-indigenous peoples. It is the all made in the image of God. Jesus loved the little children, all the children of the world, red and yellow, black and white. They are precious in his sight. Ooh, that's revolutionary language. If you really love all of those children, we have a tremendous witness to bear.
Well, David, free speech is absolutely critical, as I said, to the whole enterprise of truth-seeking. And I don't mean that simply in the formal context of academia. I mean truth-seeking as an existential project that is leading a life as a truth seeker, leading the examined life. Now, here's the problem. We human beings, frail, fallen, fallible creatures that we are, naturally tend to wrap our emotions more or less tightly around our beliefs, around our convictions. Now, that's not in itself bad. As a matter of fact, we need some emotion behind our convictions in order to get anything done. You know, to get up for work in the morning or for school, to get the kids fed and diapered or get the kids off to school, fight for a worthy cause. All that requires some emotional oomph. But here's the problem. If we wrap our emotions too tightly around our convictions, we fall into the ditch of dogmatism. And pretty soon into the chasm of sophistry. We care more about our opinions because we've fallen in love with them than we do about the truth. And then we perceive an opponent as an enemy, and then we abuse our free speech rights in order to bully and intimidate. That's a corruption of free speech. That's an abuse of free speech. And we must never permit ourselves to fall into that kind of behavior and then rationalize it, attempt to justify it in the name of free speech. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't exercise our free speech or speak boldly, including speaking truth to power, including cultural power, including economic power, including political power, but we have to be careful because we are emotional as well as rational creatures. And Cornell and I are no different from anybody else. We fail, we fall, sometimes we go overboard. We get so passionate about our beliefs, we say things, including online, that we shouldn't say. You know, it's very easy when you're a strong believer, as I am, in the market economy. I think the market needs to be properly regulated, but I think markets have lifted millions and millions of people out of poverty. I don't want to go down the road to socialism. It's very easy for me to respond to a socialist argument or a social democratic argument by calling that guy a communist, or people who support that politician a communist, equating them with Stalin. And on the other side, it's easy to say, oh, well, if you support Donald Trump, you're a fascist. You support Donald Trump, you're a Nazi, or something like that. And again, that's the passion getting control of us. When we're doing it right, we're exercising our free speech by deploying the proper currency of intellectual, including political, intellectual discourse. And that currency consists of reasons, arguments, and evidence. Whether you're online, whether you're in the classroom, whether you're in the dorm, whether you're in the dining hall having a conversation, no matter how strongly you disagree, discipline yourself. We need to discipline ourselves to speak in that currency. Give reasons, give arguments, cite evidence. Don't resort to name calling or abusing or shaming or relying on a background orthodoxy which we then enforce through peer pressure. That's not helping anybody, including yourself.
And I think just to tease out a little bit, and you tell me whether you agree or disagree, though, brother, is that, I mean, as Christians, our ultimate allegiance ought to be to Jesus. Our penultimate allegiance could be to a whole host of political perspectives. So that every flag is under the cross. But when that flag coincides with the kinds of truth and justice and love, and you think of the history of those who struggled with that flag, fought for that flag, you say yes. When that flag does not, there is a critique of the flag in the name of the cross. It doesn't make you anti-flag or anti-American. It makes you a Christian who is anti-injustice in America. That's a very different view of the world. And you see it in Dorothy Day and Martin Luther King Jr. and a whole host of great Christians that we know. One just died, Toni Morrison. Yeah. Just buried her on Friday. Deep Christian. You all know the great Toni Morrison, beloved, Paradise, jazz. See, always rooted in for her the incarnational conception of what it is to be human. So in that sense, the dialectical interplay between flag and cross, so that you can be a patriot, but a patriot who always has an allegiance to a cross, which means you're willing to be critical of your nation, not to trash the nation, but to recognize all of us, every nation, every civilization is subject to critique, judgment under that cross, capital C.
I completely agree. Now, here's the thing. What is the great perennial threat to the human spirit? What is the great perennial threat to our spiritual wholeness, our spiritual welfare? It is idolatry. It never goes away. If you think idolatry is something that happened only 3,000 or 5,000 years ago, or only in primitive cultures and societies, you got the wrong idea of what idolatry is. What Cornell is talking about here, Jesus being ultimate, is the vaccine against idolatry. It's what prevents us from turning a flag, a country, a cause, even a just cause, into an idol. If we replace anything, we use anything to replace Jesus, we have become idol worshipers. And even if the idol is something in itself good, it has still taken us into that ditch. We cannot be truly human. We cannot be truly just. We cannot be people who are for other people, leading lives for other people when we fall into idolatry, no matter the character of the idolatry, whether it's worshiping a golden calf or worshiping a country or worshiping a political cause.
So just to exemplify it.
Very important point.
Yes, sir.
Very important.
So just to exemplify it, capitalist, socialist, you minimize abuse of the freedom of your view when you begin to give the other person the benefit of the doubt, and you're thinking, you want what I want. You want children to have food and education and medication, and you both wake up thinking, you're an advocate for the least of these, you're an advocate for the least of these. And so when you begin to see someone as, you see their point of view as even their intent is good intent, but then you think to yourself, maybe as a capitalist, well, you want what I want. I think there's a very different way to get there. I think your way is making everybody broke. And you're like, I think your way feeds the system of me monsters.
Absolutely.
And so,
and the degree to which in learning from each other, you see, we recognize again, the ism is something not to be blinded by. You see, there's no doubt that markets are indispensable. There's no doubt that personal rights and liberties are precious and must be protected. There's no doubt that private sectors are crucial. The question is, how do we ensure that, given the ways in which our complex societies are organized, that we don't have, like we have right now, 1 out of 2 of children, black and brown, under 6 years old, live in poverty in the richest nation in the history of the world. How did we come to terms with poverty? We have a history of socialist failures, communist failures, regimentation, repression, ugly. But there's a history of capitalist failures in which, for example, in America began as a capitalist society, predicated on indigenous people's land, genocidal attack, enslavement of Africans. If you can go to poor brothers and sisters in Appalachia, capitalism is not delivering. Go to the ghettos and hoods, capitalism is not delivering. So that Robbie would be the first one to say, I'm not in any way leaning towards socialism, but do I believe in public schools? Absolutely. Do I believe in healthy public
what's being taught in those public schools? Now, that's what I want to know.
But you believe in the institution of public schools,
Well,
though.
I also believe in school choice, and I believe in private schools, and I believe in homeschooling.
But you don't want to eliminate public schools. You don't want to eliminate them. They got the balance.
Unless they go into a situation in which they're becoming tools of indoctrination and indoctrinating people into an ideology that is hostile to what I think is right and
No, but that just means we want Socratic energy in public schools to make sure there's no indoctrination.
You betcha.
But we want to make sure public schools are of high quality because most people don't have a chance to go to private schools.
But we should rectify that. We should rectify that. We should make it the case that more people have the opportunity to go to Christian schools, Jewish day schools, Muslim madrasas, homeschooling, these kinds of opportunities.
Yeah, but you do want context in which different religious orientations, different ideological and political come together. I mean, look, for example, at the military. The military today is the institution in our society that is the most trusted and the most respected. 81% of our fellow citizens trust the military. Now, what is it about the military? Is the military a market? Is the military outsourced to private sources? Not at all. It's public to the core. We were just at the Air Force Academy.
We had a wonderful time.
We had a good time.
We did, yeah.
Absolutely. And to see what I love about the military is they got a martial spirit. They're soldiers. But see, I'm a Christian soldier. I got a martial spirit too.
Onward, Christian soldiers.
Absolutely. I'm willing to live and die, you see. But when you have this more laid-back commercial orientation, I'm just interested in the money. I want status. I want position. I want to be the next peacock. Everybody can look at me and see how rich I am and how smart I am. I say, let the phones be smart. You got to be wise and loving and courageous. And most importantly, the last thing you need is just to be successful like some kind of peacock. Look around, look at me, look at my foliage. No, I come from a Christian tradition that says, by your fruits you shall know them. Not the foliage, the fruits that you bear. That's what Christian witness is all about, you see.
You know, Brother Cornel, I got to say something to these fine
because they
people.
can't fly.
And to this institution. You know, I want to take an opportunity to just congratulate Liberty University and its students and faculty on the way you have received so many people here representing such a spectrum of views. I was so proud of you when Bernie Sanders came to speak, and he was treated with respect, and he was engaged and taken seriously.
And he loved it. I talked to him right after. I was praying for him. You all were wonderful. You all were wonderful.
But I'll tell you, and you know, as I said online, you contrast that with the way conservative speakers have been treated at places like Middlebury and Evergreen State and Yale and so forth.
That's true.
So, you know, God bless you for that. And you got to keep up that spirit of openness and being willing to engage. Now, I suspect that if we did a poll, we went down a series of issues, public policy issues. In this particular environment, this would be unusual because most of the time it would be the opposite where Cornell and I visit. Probably the majority of students would agree with me on most of the issues and not with Cornell. Now, you know what that tells me? You're going to think he's going to say, it tells me that you're really smart. No, I'm not. What that tells me is the guy you have more to learn from is him than from me, because he will challenge you. When we have a debate about public schools, he's challenging me. When I say, you know, we need to empower people to send their kids to schools that represent their faith, to Jewish day schools and Christian classical schools and Muslim schools and so forth, then he says to me, he raises a very important, interesting challenge. But shouldn't there be places where students from different faiths are joined together and getting to know each other? And that's true too. And it's that kind of conversation that you have to be open to, that kind of challenge. Think about what your interlocutor is saying. Consider maybe there's some truth in that. Maybe he might be right about that. How does that change what I should be thinking about this or that public policy issue?
And we learn from each other, because I got a whole lot to learn from Liberty University, I can tell you that.
We invite people from all walks of life, all views. First of all, thank you for accepting our invitation. I do want to say thank you for that.
Oh, I'm blessed to be here.
We're honored that you've come. We've learned from you today. Please tell, we talked last night, I don't want to name them out loud, it wouldn't be fair or it wouldn't be polite, but please tell all your liberal friends they would be welcome here. We are willing to learn from their viewpoint. We want them, please tell them to come on.
Beautiful, that's beautiful.
We invite them all the time.
But that has so much to do with your own leadership. And
Yes,
part of it has to do with the stereotype of Liberty University. You see, it's such superficial stereotypes that are out there. And so when people think of Liberty University, they're automatically associated with various stereotypes. We know every university, every community has a variety of different kind of people. Heterogeneity, diversity. You all have your own conflict. You have your own struggles. You have your own interpretations of Jesus. You have your own ways of trying to understand what is it like to be a Christian in 2019. And once you get beyond that stereotype, what do you see? All of these complicated human beings, these featherless, two-legged, linguistically conscious creatures born between urine and feces, made in the image of God, trying to make their move from mama's womb to tomb.
I'm still catching up with the 2 sentences ago.
That's us.
Hoping I don't get fired because of it.
But that needs to surface more in a powerful way.
We are in this room, right? There are 95 nations represented in this room.
Amazing.
Their definition of everything is so diverse.
Good God Almighty. Good God.
I think what I love more than anything else, even more than the content, is the posture that you guys have exemplified for us today. We've got about 4 minutes. All right, and I want to finish up by doing something fun. They've agreed to do this right before they came out this morning. They wrote, and no one saw each other. I was there watching them to make sure they didn't look. But they wrote answers, and we're going to do this game. Where are you at, Commons 1? Where's Commons 1 at? Cool. There they are. All right. Where are you at, Commons 2? Where are you at, Commons 2? All right. So here's what we did. No. They call themselves the Shoe, even though they're Commons 3. So hey, let me know when you want to be called Commons 3, because right now y'all this little cult called the Shoe. All right, so let me know. But And the rest of you, the Hill, East, everybody else. Yeah. All right, hold on. All right, so I got a game. We got a game. So here's what we're going to do. And we've got, hold on. We've got this thing played out the whole semester where everybody will get, based on the different kinds of guests, opportunities for this. All right, so we got the whole thing laid out. But today, since you guys have so much in common, we're going to play this game called Commons Denominator, all right? And it's going to be Commons 1 against Commons 2, all right? And so you're going to be playing for that. We're going to play a game, okay? So let's go ahead and get this set up. As we're setting this up, here's the game. Let's watch this little video's 80s throwback right here.
It's time to play Commons Denominator, the game where great minds battle it out for great students. In this episode, we'll see Dr. Cornel West and Dr. Robert George try to answer 5 questions about one another to see how well these friends really know each other. For each question they're able to answer correctly, they'll receive 1 point, and at the end of the game, the contestant with the most points wins. Today, Dr. Cornel West will be playing for Commons 1, and Dr. Robert George will be playing for Commons 2. The contestant who comes in first place will not only have bragging rights, but also 1,300 Krispy Kreme donuts for the dorm they're playing for. So everybody, let's get ready to play Commons Denominator!
Let's get ready to rumble! Come on, y'all. Come on. All right, here's what we're going to do. We literally have brought, look at these buckets. We have tons and tons and tons of Krispy Kreme donuts. Commons 1. If you win, we got donuts for you. Commons 2. If you win, we got donuts for you. The rest of you, this is why these Commons dorms cost a little more money. All right, so, all right. So here's what we did. We got questions, and we want to see, since you guys are such good friends, if you actually have Commons Denominator and know each other. These are not the, can I get the cards? Here, the question. You guys have the cards with the questions? Can I? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Dylan. Dylan. All right. Are you ready? We're going to go. I will ask both of you. You've already answered this, and we'll see if you get it right. Whoever gets to 5 first, all right? What is your friend's favorite color? What is your friend's favorite color?
Ooh, Brother Robbie, let me think. Maybe the sky blue.
Blue, all right. What is your friend's favorite color?
Red.
Red, all right, let's see if they get it. Really? All right. That's pretty good.
Yeah, no, it surprises us.
What is your friend's favorite author?
Oh, the one and only, the inimitable Gilbert Keith Chesterton.
Chesterton? That's a good Catholic answer right there. That's safe. What is your friend's favorite author?
This guy?
Yes, sir.
Oh, Anton Chekhov.
Anton Chekhov. Wonderful. All right, let's see what the answer is. Oh! Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Amazing.
We hold it on. We hold it on. We hold it on.
Y'all eat ice cream? Do Ivy League professors eat ice cream?
Every once in a long while,
Yep.
yes,
All right.
indeed.
You got to use your mic, Dr. George, so we can hear. Are you ready?
Sorry.
What is your friend's favorite ice cream flavor?
We've never had ice cream together, though, have we?
No, we drank some wine. Ask us about wine. Can you?
Lord,
Your answer.
Lord.
Ask me what my favorite kind of wine
Yeah,
is.
what's your favorite kind of?
Unfermented.
Oh, I like that.
Hashtag Liberty Way.
I like that.
Thank you. All right. What is your favorite ice cream flavor?
I just don't know it, Brother Robbie. I would probably say chocolate.
What is your friend's favorite?
My guess is he likes chocolate too. That's my
All
guess.
right, let's see it. Survey says. Oh, the irony. No. Put that back up. Put that back up, y'all. The irony.
Sorry,
the
guys.
irony right there. The irony. What is your friend's favorite sport team?
Oh, I would say West Virginia football team.
Yeah, West Virginia football, okay. Oh, were you actually talking about our football team, the Liberty Flames, that play Syracuse tomorrow?
We're gonna knock Syracuse tomorrow. Syracuse tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
Do
So your
thing
answer
tomorrow.
is Liberty Flames or West Virginia?
Well, no, this is his favorite.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
This is his
What is your
favorite.
friend's
His favorite, West Virginia.
West Virginia, being a
Yeah.
West Virginia. Okay, so West Virginia is his favorite team. All right. What is your friend's favorite sport team?
I'm going to guess this because of his admiration for the great, the legendary, the incomparable Willie Mays, the San Francisco Giants.
Okay. There we go. Let's see what. Nerds. What is your, and listen, you can't, Dr. West, your favorite movie can't be like, oh, that's a tough one because I've been in 24. You can't answer that. That would be so. What is your friend's favorite movie?
Oh.
What is his favorite movie?
He will never get this in a million years.
Oh. But you know that movie that we used to teach together that Duvall was in, you remember? What was the name of that?
Goodness. You're talking about The Apostle.
The Apostle. I know you heard that movie.
Man.
Yours
I know
is
he
The
loves that
Apostle for
movie.
him.
He might actually like that movie more and forgot about it and want to add it.
Oh.
Because that's the one he really loves.
Yes,
but
sir.
I would maybe say It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, that's a good guess.
Oh, that's a
So that's your final answer?
Yeah, It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life, okay. What is your friend's favorite movie?
I'm going to guess that it's West Side Story.
West Side Story.
The great Leonard Bernstein.
And Stephen Sondheim, the great Stephen Sondheim.
There it is.
Oh, look at that.
Citizen Kane.
The man who shot Liberty Valance.
Citizen Kane.
And Citizen Kane. Yeah, no, that's...
The man who shot Liberty Valance. Oh, the irony.
But who directed that film?
I think it was John Ford, wasn't it?
Was that John Ford?
I believe it was John Ford.
Wow, no, he's a towering figure.
Ask me what my favorite movie is.
What's your favorite movie?
I don't watch movies. I read the Bible all day. I'm honestly, in all of these, I'm so heavenly minded. I'm no earthly good.
Honestly, David, I think you're safe. You know, Dr. Falwell's not here. You're safe. You can tell the truth.
That's true. My favorite. Yeah. My favorite movie.
Chateau Lafitte, The Sound of Music.
Oh no, but it's the greatest story ever told.
Yes, sir. My favorite. I mean, my favorite movies. Obviously, my favorite movie is How Stella Got Her Groove Back. No. My favorite movie is Saving Private Ryan. That was by far my favorite movie. All right.
Yeah.
What? Last one. Who's ahead? What's the score? Last one before we get. You're ahead. Okay. All right, you can catch up. All right. Let's see. Y'all about to get donuts unless we catch up here. What is your friend's favorite band or musician?
Ooh. Robbie is a great artist, banjo player, unbelievable
He is a banjo
musician.
player.
God, he does Bob Dylan so magnificently. Steve Martin.
Steve Martin, yes. The comedian / banjo legend, Steve Martin. You kind of look like Steve Martin a little bit too, sir. It's awesome.
Handsome guy. Yeah.
What is your friend's favorite band or musician?
John Coltrane.
John Coltrane. Survey says, oh! All right, we're tied. All right, last one. Last one. All right, it's tied. I don't even... Wait. Did you just say to divide them and give them?
No.
That is not capitalism, sir. That's socialism, and we will not. No, sir. All right, you ready? What is your friend's favorite season? Is it fall? Is it winter? What's your friend's favorite season? Hold on. Tell me.
Cornell's favorite?
Tell me. Okay. Tell me. Okay. All right. What is your friend?
Oh, no, you're asking what?
Yes, sir. what is your friend's favorite season?
Oh, I gave it to you.
Yes. What is your friend's favorite season?
Autumn, the fall.
What is your friend's favorite season?
Spring.
You got it wrong, right? No, you got.
I don't know. What is your favorite season?
Now you got me completely confused.
Honestly, I went over there and your goatee got in my ear. I didn't even listen to a thing you said.
Look, Cornell's won me over. Donuts for everybody.
Donuts for everybody.
Donuts.
All right. All right. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to give the donuts to, because honestly, I don't know if you know about these kids, half of them are gluten-free. So we're going to give half the donuts to Commons 2 and half the donuts to Commons 1. Come on, y'all. Give it up for them. Amazing job. Can we thank these brothers one more time? All right. Hey, God bless you guys. One more time. Can we thank these great gentlemen for being here? Such an honor to have them here.
God bless you.
Hey, you're dismissed. You can tell your professor that you're excused for the few minutes that we'll be running late, okay? In case we do. Thank you. God bless you guys.